Nobody is making money at 250 units.
Nobody
is making money at 500 units. To be honest, even 1,000, the vendor's hoping that that's a beginning point, a launch pad to much bigger opportunity.
Do you have a brilliant product idea but don't know where to start to get it made? Or are you looking to level up your product but afraid to take it overseas?
If so, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Jackie.
And I'm Erin, and we are
the Sourcing Gals,
your trusted guides to everything you need to know about sourcing, manufacturing, and scaling your product overseas. Whether you are just starting out or you've been making your own product for a while, we are here to help women source products overseas without the overwhelm.
In each episode, we'll share insider tips, actionable strategies, and inspiring stories to help you source more effectively, save time, and boost your profits.
Duh!
We know how hard it can be to juggle the ins and outs of product development, but don't worry, we've got your back.
So grab a cup of coffee, get comfy, and let's dive into how you can grow your business,
make more money,
and turn your products into profit. Welcome to the
Sourcing Gals. Now let's get started. High five.
Hi. Running a product-based business is complicated enough. Your banking shouldn't be. That's why we use Mercury. It's a free, intuitive banking platform built for entrepreneurs. No monthly fees, and get this, no wire fees ever. Plus, it integrates with QuickBooks, making bookkeeping a breeze. And the best part? Their credit card gives you 1.5% cash back with a holiday bonus of 2.5% cash back on ad spend. Terms do apply. Banking doesn't have to be complicated. Join me and thousands of other founders using Mercury. Learn more and sign up today using the link in the show notes.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of
The Sourcing Gals.
Okay, today we're going to talk about the 5-cent mistake. We see founders fight over 5 cents, and what they don't know is they might be losing thousands on the back end.
This is such an important thing for founders to understand. And it's something that in the retail space, in the corporate space, I even had to teach maybe our sales team or other stakeholders in the business that just because you can push on price doesn't mean you should.
Oh, I love that. It's so true. There are so many times where, especially for vendors I've worked with time and time again, if I know they can keep some extra money, I let them. And to be honest, I've even gone back sometimes and said, hey, take an extra nickel, take an extra dime, take an extra 20 cents here because we have room. Because guess what? The next time when I actually need that nickel or 10 cents back, they're so much more willing to give it then.
And I think that this entire concept, we're going to get into some very tactical ways to push back on pricing, but I think the entire concept goes back to something we preach on every single episode, which is relationships, trust, just building accountability and longevity with your factory partners.
Yeah, it's that discernment between can I? Okay, but then should you? Should you actually go and try to get that nickel, dime, quarter back? And I think a big part of this also, there's one frame of mind where it's I'm just going to push back and try to get more money back. There's another frame of mind where I really truly need that for a certain reason. Let me partner with my factory and ask, hey, are there any changes we can make to the product to get me 5 or 10 cents back? Because there's a chance that there probably is, especially if you're just starting out and you've just sent them a retail sample to follow. We've talked about this before. Maybe the stitching detail that retail sample or inspiration sample had is costing you 5 cents and you really just need that back versus having them give you a full loaded in price and say, I need 5 cents back. Can you shave 5 cents?
This is also one of the reasons why we talk about framing the price that you need from the beginning before you go into product development, because something that I see often with companies I've worked with is that they've actually never even asked the question from the beginning. And we get a year, 2 years down the road where we're looking at the financials and we actually do need money back, and nobody's just ever pushed back. And in those cases, when you are looking at your margins, when you do realize that actually for my business to run well, I'm going to need to be in a different spot, by all means, please push back.
Yeah.
And I tell this story often, but I started a company and I saved them like $4 million in my first year because just like no one had negotiated the pricing. And the vendors had just given a price and they said, okay. And everyone went along their merry way. And the vendor had a lot of room. And normally I wouldn't just, if things were great, working great for both partners, I wouldn't just go take that money back for no reason. But things weren't going great. We did need that margin.
Yep.
We were starting to go wholesale and really needed to be sharper.
And okay, that is a perfect segue to what was in my head, which is the conversation of when to push back. And I'm going to park the one mindset I was talking about, which is like, hey, I need to get to this price. Can you help me? Like, let's push that aside. Let's say you've had those conversations and it's coming down to truly, you kind of don't have anything left to take out and you just need 5 or 10 cents more. I want to make sure that those conversations are very different when you are just starting out versus when you are hitting a big moment in your business trajectory, i.e. going to wholesale, i.e. getting a much larger volume purchase order. I say this because nobody is making money at 250 units. Nobody is making money at 500 units. To be honest, even 1,000, the vendor's hoping that that's a beginning point, a launch pad to much bigger opportunity. If you think about the people that they have to hire and train and the patterns they have to cut and the sewing lines they have to set up for a 200, 500 unit order, it is not highly profitable for them. So the price they are giving you typically in those startup costs is going to be more padded because it legitimately costs them more. And even with that padded price or that inflated price that you might feel, there's a good chance that they're still not really making that much money on it. So those are just things that I like to tell some of our startup founders when they are trying to push back on cost and when they're trying to shave truly a nickel or a dime. I'm saying, I'm trying to make sure I level set like the total cost of goods we're talking about here. 5 cents on your total cost of goods. Are we talking about pushing back to get you back $100 because you're only buying 500 units?
Right.
So I think there's also that take a step back and look when you roll the price up to what your opening order quantity is it really all that important? Now, I'm not saying as you grow, as you scale, that 5 cents across 5,000, 10,000, 25,000 units, that is dollars.
Absolutely.
That is dollars that matter. But when you're only buying 250 or 500, to push back and use, I call it like that ace card. It's like that ace in the pocket. Like if you're going to pull that out, your trump card, you really want it to be because it's going to be meaningful to your business.
Sure.
In the beginning.
Sure. And I do want to caveat and say that these units are largely for lower priced items that are overseas. We're not talking about like leather handbags out of Italy.
Yeah, correct.
Or, we had someone approach us yesterday about like sterling silver jewelry.
Yes.
The higher the price tag on something, typically the lower the MOQs are, typically. So, find that middle ground. If you are a lower price item, anywhere under, what do you say, like $20?
Yeah.
$15?
Yeah.
Like you're not moving the needle at 200 pieces.
Yeah.
And although it might, mean a lot for you in your pocket now, think of the long term. Think of the long term because cheap today can be expensive tomorrow.
Yeah. And again, that's where we're saying that 5 cent ask that you're trying to get on your 500 units could truly mean thousands on your next order that you have when you actually get that big purchase order.
Sure. And I think when you're talking with the factories, and if you are nickel and diming at every single stage, that's exhausting. And they're going to be less open when you truly need it. It's like calling, or what's that fable about wolf calling wolf?
Oh yeah. The girl who cried wolf?
Yeah.
Boy who cried wolf. Sorry.
Boy who cried wolf. Yeah. Crying wolf. I like to compare it to that because if you're just negotiating for the sake of negotiating and for your 200 units, and they're like, fine, give her 5 cents. And then you get a $50K order from a wholesaler and you need 5 more cents. They're going to be like, I gave you 5 cents already.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't have any more room to move, or maybe they're just tired of being nickeled and dimed every time they turn around. So allowing it to work with your growing and be good enough, and then pushing as you go. I think there's some strategy to that. Obviously not to your detriment.
Yeah. And I think going back to, again, that startup phase, those lower MOQs I mentioned, no one's making money. And by the way, the factory's taking a risk on your business.
Mhm.
You don't have you don't have any proof necessarily because you're not buying to show them that you have proof, right? You're probably testing and learning, which is fine. But your real goal of these factories is finding someone who's going to be willing to work with you, get your product made in, hopefully a reasonable time frame, and help you prove the demand and come back to them. So for all those reasons, they're also investing in you at this point in your journey.
And they're not just investing in making your product. They're investing in supporting you through an account manager. They're
Correct.
investing in the whole ecosystem that surrounds a new client. Think about if you went to a hardware store because you needed paint to paint something in your house, and you had to buy paint and paintbrushes and a paint tray and all this stuff, and all you had to paint was like the leg of a table. It's different than when you buy all that stuff and you're painting 2 rooms. Does that analogy make sense?
Yeah, totally makes sense. Yes, it's. I always say that whether you're producing 500 units or 50,000 units, the work that goes into it is the same.
Mhm.
The only thing different is the profitability of it,
Mhm.
the
Exactly.
volume of it. So you have to understand that work that they are doing at the 500 units is the same as their big box retailers. So again, they are taking a risk, a gamble to hope that you become their next big hitter.
And then when you do become your next big hitter, yeah,
all day long, all day long, push back, get the nickels, get the dimes, get the, hey, can we leverage this one customer? I have a tighter mark. I've done also the exact same product for 2 different clients and worked and approved 2 different costs with my factory because I had room on the one and didn't have room on the other. And the math didn't math perfectly. Like the factory was still losing a little bit more, but the fact that I was willing to give back on one order made them willing to come down and take a loss on the other. So I think it's knowing, again, that trump card, like when to pull it. Like you got to know when to hold them.
Know when to fold them. Okay. I did sing karaoke this past weekend, but I had a cold
What?
and it didn't go well. And I thought I should do this more. But anyway,
I'm sorry I missed it. I was there, but I wasn't there.
That leads me to a thought about when you're starting out, it doesn't mean you should just like take an astronomical cost because you're small.
Agree.
You do not have to do that. It means communicating your growth plan with your factory and letting them know, like, I need some visibility into where this can go if my orders are to be bigger. Maybe you don't take that cost savings now, but maybe you ask for a chart of what this is going to cost at 200, 1,000, 10,000, 20,000.
And I think, again, if you take our Smart Start sourcing, like that is foundational when you're vetting factory A versus factory B versus factory C. Because I can tell you, your startup cost for one factory might be higher, but what if your 5K cost from that same factory is astronomically lower because they're giving you major price breaks and your goal is to go to wholesale. Your goal is to go to big box retail. So I love that, Erin. Like it is so true. It's not just about your startup cost. It's about the ramp. It's about the scale. Ask it all those different unit breaks. Because again, you might be willing to pay a little more to a factory upfront if they're going to be your best partner when you go big.
And that's just the predictability. That's looking at your product and seeing the road ahead of you and being able to predict, okay, it's a little expensive these days. I get it. I'm small. But as I grow, I know this is going to be something that calculates to be a good margin, allows me to achieve my goals, my product, go to wholesale, whatever. And if you can see that path, if you can predict what it will look like in the future with your factory, then you have all the information you need.
What if your sourcing agent lived in your browser? Meet Axio, Alibaba's AI-powered sourcing engine that understands what you need, matches you with pre-vetted suppliers, analyzes trends, and even helps with compliance. Want to test for a special certification or create custom specs? Axio handles that as well. As the sourcing gals, we've used it to cut sourcing time from weeks to minutes. And with our code, The Sourcing Gals, you get 10% off your monthly subscription. If you're launching or scaling a product-based business, this tool changes the game. Try Axio with our code today. Link is in the show notes. So let's talk about a few other times when we think you should not push back on your price. So one I'll mention is, we talked a lot about it, is MOQ.
Mm-hmm.
If they are willing to come down on the units you have to purchase, I would not then go back and slap them with, oh, by the way, can you give me 5 cents off of that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Take that as that is them giving you something. Because again, now their profitability just went down even further with the quantity that they're willing to work with you on.
Yes. That is a big one. You just mentioned that. And then one I mentioned, I think it was in another episode, but it was about speed.
Yes.
I will actually offer to pay more for speed in certain circumstances. If they say, oh, I'm sorry, we have several other projects kind of in the queue ahead of you. I've been known to say, how much will it cost for me to get first in the queue? 5 more cents? 10 more cents? Because I have room. I can give it to you.
Yeah.
Now, don't pull that out unless you actually like really, really, really need it, because that might become the new benchmark.
Yeah.
But certainly there are people who are willing to speed up their production. And maybe it's not jumping a queue. Maybe it's for a little bit extra money. I can put 50 more sewers on your project.
Yeah. That's a great example. The other reason why you wouldn't push back on cost is if your factory is doing you a solid with your sample fees. Maybe they're shipping your samples to you and they're not charging you for it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that every time, I think we say this on like every other podcast, it costs like $150 to ship a swatch of material basically from China to the US. So if your vendor is not charging you for every time samples come back and forth, like that's a lot of nickels that they are absorbing for you.
Yeah. And I'll give an example too of a company I was working at. I will say this is not my preferred way to work, but the company as a whole loved to nickel and dime. Like, not even nickel and dime, like pennies and half pennies on things. Like, there was at one point I was talking about cost of a seed bead being 0.0008 cents.
Oh my gosh.
And so we were taking that approach. Well, guess what we were doing? We were teaching our vendors that that's the approach we wanted to take. So they started being like, well, okay, samples cost $25 per mold. It's your sample fee is the cost of goods times 4. The shipping is blank. And those started adding up so quickly. And we didn't even realize how much they were absorbing on our behalf until we were starting to like get a little nitpicky with it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we believe like the leadership was like, let's back off of our hard-lined approach on this cost. And I was thinking, no kidding. We were winning.
Yeah.
Before.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you shouldn't if it's right, but you can maybe just ask the question. Is
Correct.
there room?
Correct. So let's talk about when we think you truly should push back on price.
Yeah. So we've given a lot of like anecdotes back and forth.
Yeah.
But we can talk about the best times too.
So when demand is proven, when you have done your starter, your test, your trial, and you're coming back and you are giving them more volume and not just going from like 500 to 600, right? I know like a lot of times, even one of my clients was telling me, that her husband, if they order 1001, they get the lower price break. And I'm like, I get that. Some factories are set up with these very rough, rigid things, but that's not really the majority. And it's not all of a sudden that, again, they get one more unit and the factory's super profitable now that they can give you a lower quantity. So I kind of take those a little bit as like fluid guardrails when it comes to like price breaks. But I will say though, when you are scaling, when there is an order you made and you're coming back and doubling, tripling, exponential growth, 100% ask for it. And hopefully, again, you've asked for price breaks along the journey as you've been quoting, but it's worth to reconfirm that.
Something that you just reminded me of when you were saying it's fluid. It's not just like 1001. something that I like to do with the factories is instead of maybe negotiating the pricing per style or per SKU or per color, like this color, red is 1,001, but blue is 80. So I would try to say, okay, combined, I have over 1,000. Can we work on that cost break? That might be a bad example, but let me give you the example of if you have 500, 500, 500, and then in your best color, you have 10,000, I would be negotiating lower costs on everything across the board.
Yeah.
You can look at it as a PO as a whole.
Correct.
Again, one of my clients for like this like natural color, she ordered thousands, but then for all of the like smaller colors, it was much smaller. So we came together with the factory and actually came somewhere in the middle. So we weren't paying the huge upcharge of 500 pieces on the fringe colors.
Yeah.
But we weren't quite getting the benefit of the 10,000. We were kind of coming somewhere in the middle that when you looked at the PO as a whole, it was beneficial.
And I actually had a conversation with a client about a similar thing. Where should her price breaks be? How much should she expect to get at those price breaks? And I said, it's really hard. It's product dependent. I can tell you in apparel, when you go from 500 to the thousands range, I mean, you might see the most significant price break usually happens when you go from your startup of 500 to like 2.5K. Like,
Yep.
That first big hump over it, you could see 20, 30% plus cost savings, to be honest. Then as that starts to scale up,
economies of scale.
Thank you. The economies of scale get tighter and tighter, right? So like, well, I just went from 5,000 to 10K, shouldn't it? It's like, well, the process is the process. The fabric only gets so much more cost effective. The sewers only get so much more.
There is kind of
efficient.
like a plateau.
There is a little bit of a plateau.
And that plateau comes mostly with products that are made in a line.
Correct.
By humans.
Correct.
It's kind of different. And it's actually the opposite when you're looking at products that are machine made. We were talking about acrylic hair clips the other day. Those were an example of they come out of an injectable mold. Maybe one human has to kind of like man the machine. But other than that, they don't. And the more they do, the faster the machine can go, the better the output starts getting. It becomes more consistent. So you see a pretty sharp cost break at some of these very high quantities because they can kind of set it and forget it versus lower quantities when the machine like can't quite calibrate and everything is still a little, below optimal operating.
Yeah. And going back to the client I was talking about, her question was, again, what to expect, but also she runs one base fabric. I said, so make sure you're talking about your total commitment because she was breaking it down by style, by size. And I was like, talk about it in total. And then within that, what can raise your cost is the literal setup and tear down of the sewing lines because this was an apparel product.
Mm-hmm.
And even though her quantities were growing, they weren't significant. She's not in like the 5 to 10K range just yet. It's still like in these thousands kind of. I said, okay, can the factory batch certain prints together? Think about every time you have to change the thread in a machine. Can they utilize the exact same thread color for 5 of the prints? Or can you engineer the print to allow the factory to not have to turn over the threads? So all of a sudden their sewing line went from maybe 500 units of one print to 3,000 units across 5. But from the sewer's perspective, no change.
Didn't matter.
Didn't matter. No machine changeover, no new. So there's ways to think about that scale also in regards to price and pushing back on cost. Are there ways to batch certain operations to find maybe that threshold of when the price will come down, when you can get that money back?
Like you wouldn't fly to Europe and like have a cup of coffee and fly home.
I mean, it'd be nice. It was on my vision board, a half-eaten croissant from Paris. I'm like, that is my goal, to go to Paris, eat half a croissant and be like,
but even like a day trip, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
the effort it takes and the cost that it takes isn't worth really like what's happening. You would be like, oh, I need a week. I need 2 weeks. Maybe you would like more. That'd be great. But when that cost that's wrapped around like the main function is set, you want to get as much as you can out of that function.
So we talked a lot about volume. I think this is a really important one. Price when you talk about commitments that you're making to the factory,
Mm-hmm.
like amount of reorders coming down the pipeline.
Okay.
That is another way that you can leverage, especially in the apparel world. If it's like, hey, my next order is 1,000, but I'm planning to place an additional one 2 months later and then another one 3 months later, maybe you batch some fabric.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you batch and buy and pay the vendor for all the fabric up front, and then they're willing to drop your cost of goods for the balance of your production runs.
And this works best when you have an existing relationship. If you are brand new to a factory and you're like, hey, I have more orders coming, they're going to be like, you need to show me what you're made of a little bit before I'm going to take a bet on you.
Very true.
But when you have a long-standing relationship with a factory, they will, of course, do that.
Yeah. And again, I think for them, it's finding economies of scales for them. Like that is where the price comes down, when they can get most efficient. And again, you can ask them those questions. Hey, I'm really needing to get this cost down. What is it going to take to get there? What do you need to make this be beneficial for you? And see if you can rework some things on your end. You might be able to.
I'll actually give you an example that just happened last month. I think you were on the phone call about this, is that we had a product and it was going to be a kind of a high cost and minimum for each color because the colors had to be done custom. And it was higher than what we wanted. And I told the vendor, okay, how about we order our minimum, which was $250. And I think they wanted us to do like $600 or $1,000. But I said, why don't we do our $250 and you hold on to the rest of the materials? And if we don't place orders against them within a 6-month period, we will pay for it separately. And it was a new relationship.
Yep.
But they said, all right, I mean, I have your number. That might not be something that everyone would do, but they agreed basically to hold the fabric. And if over a certain period of time, I did not place an order against it, they would invoice me.
Yeah. I think that's a great, again, partnership there in regards to you signing up to something to help the factory out, but also try to get what you needed at the end of the day, which is a lower MOQ.
Lower cost.
You know? So those are opportunities where we're not going to push back on the cost they gave us for that either.
No, we're not.
Right? We're like, thank you for doing us a solid. We got a lower cost because of that. For the customer, the win was a lower MOQ.
Right.
That was more important than a lower cost right now. Because guess what? Net at $250 times the cost, it was still a lot less of an investment than 600 units investment at a slightly reduced price.
You got it. Absolutely.
So it's like you got to sometimes math it out and see what makes the most sense.
A lot of this we have talked about is based on a long game. It's not necessarily for your first order you've ever placed. I think we're bringing it up because we want you to know that it can get better. It can evolve. It can come down. Your first order is not the place to do it. But there are some things that you can do that you can know as you're starting that will help your cost now and in the long run. And one is to be a good client.
Oh, pain and suffering
will cost you money. Right. I hate to say this way, but like if you're a pain in the ass, they're not going to bend over backward for you.
So true.
I've had this happen where one of the companies I worked for were just like notoriously not good to factories. It's honestly the reason I ended up leaving that company, because it hurt my heart to see our partners treated like this. But our costs kept going up. And everyone was like, why are our costs going up? I'm like, because we're awful. We're really bad to work with.
Yeah. We've talked about this. Every time you go back and have them resample, resubmit, right? Especially when those orders are starting out rather small. I mean, it is a process. It is costly for them. And even things as simple as how many rounds of sampling you do. Oh my goodness. And we've talked about this. It is one thing to have your personal designer hat on. It is another thing to have a customer hat on. And will the customer really notice the difference, right? And all those conversations that you all listeners hopefully have heard before, those are decisions that will affect your cost in the long run.
What would you say is like a normal amount of samples?
In the apparel world, I'm hoping that worst case, that third sample's done.
Right.
Now, again, if you're in a highly technical product of apparel where it's again, a lot of pleating details, a lot, performance, all this stuff. That could be a different story. I can't speak for that, but I could say like the basic merch world where we're going with a pretty good tech pack. We already know our fabric. I mean, I'm usually down to 2 samples, to be honest.
Right.
And then the last one being a PP sample when, for final.
So in most jewelry and accessories, it's also too. I will say the caveat to that in accessories is footwear and handbags, like small leather goods. They tend to be much more because your first sample tends to be more of a mock-up. You do it in muslin or maybe some different type of fabric. Same with like high quality jewelry. You would do your first one in like a brass. You wouldn't do all your samples in gold or something like that. So you do maybe a little bit more. But like that 2 range. But I can remember at Abercrombie sometimes going into like the 7, 8 sample range.
Gosh, can you imagine?
And people wanted to kill us.
Yeah. I mean, no doubt. And then you're trying to go in again, fight for dollars. And they're like, dude, you've had us in the sample, like you've booked our sample room for the next like month, basically.
Right. We got no other work done.
Nothing else done.
And along with being a good client is like contracts, agreements, payments, sticking to your word. I think one of the things I've seen done that will really ruin price and a relationship is like trying to negotiate things after the PO has been placed or after you've already agreed to it.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I've seen people do, and I do not recommend. It will not help you in the long run. It will not help your costing. The other thing is not paying your vendor on time.
Yeah.
That is like the amount of times I've seen people just be willy-nilly on their vendor payment, and then they're like, well, why won't they come down on my costs? I'm like, because they don't know when their paycheck from you is coming.
Well, and I'm going to do a little plug here for our favorite banking platform, Mercury.
Oh, yeah.
This is not a paid ad, people. But let me tell you, I just have a recent story about this because typically in my past, I had a bank where I had to go drive into the bank to do a wire transfer. I have to go in, sit down at a table, fill out that paperwork because I didn't pay for the business version of my online banking that would allow me to do it electronically. My business wasn't at that place and the cost, it was not cheap to do it monthly. And with how rarely I was wiring money, the math did not math. Like for 2 or 3 times a year, 4 times a year, it wasn't worth it. Well, now I'm wiring more frequently. And I will tell you, having Mercury, which is our favorite online banking platform, first of all, I used to pay wire fees every time. Anywhere from $60 to $80 for international wire fees. Mercury's free. Second of all, when I would come to paying my vendor, when I was working my corporate job, I had to find a time. I mean, who could go to a bank when you work a full-time job? Like, I'm sorry, nobody. So I would have to try to go on the weekends, or if I was lucky enough, maybe I couldn't leave at lunch because my bank was not anywhere near my work. So my point was, I did have struggles with paying my vendor exactly on the day that I needed to because I literally had issues just getting into the bank to wire the money. So I will tell you, yesterday, I owed my factory a couple $1,000 for some samples and things. I had them rush me out. And I was just chit-chatting with some friends. We were sitting around a table and I just got online. $2,000 just got wired to China, like in maybe 30 seconds. I didn't have to go to a bank. And then the other night, the last wire that I made, which was a much bigger wire, was made at 11 p.m. at night.
Yes.
Because I just needed to get it over and I didn't have to go in and it was done. So not to rant about Mercury, but I'm telling you, it is like our favorite platform. Yes. It has changed my life in so many ways. We run all of our business through it. And for product-based business, it is a great, easy way to pay your vendors quickly, efficiently, and the minute they need it.
And they get it right away.
Right away. There's no, it's the best. So we'll drop that in the show notes as well, because it is truly a game changer for product-based businesses when it comes to time and energy and being really accountable to your vendors, like super timely for that.
Sure. Yeah. So all in all, you can't be a flake.
Yep.
And then, or be a bad client and then think they're going to bend over backward for you when it comes to costing. And I know that sounds obvious, but sometimes we get very caught up in what we're doing. It's the most important thing to us. And it is, it is our business. We do want to take it seriously, but we also have to be humans and understand that we're dealing with other humans and my husband and I say this all the time. We're like, just be a normal human being. Just
doesn't seem too much to ask.
Be a normal human being.
Yeah. Well, so I think a couple takeaways for you to recap this conversation we've had. Remember that in early stage, this is about investing. The factory's investing in you. You're investing in the factory. This is about speed, clarity, and launching. that should be the main focus. It does not mean that you're going to give up on your margin.
No.
It does not mean you're not going to cross cost and find the right factory that's not just good for you for now, but for future. All those things are important. But the pushing, just save that. Like, save that.
Save the pushing for a good time.
Save it for a good time. Save it for when you need it. Save it for when
you sounded sexual.
I mean, sure, that too. But save it for when you're scaling. Save it for when you're really needing to optimize because you have this huge opportunity, and that nickel, that quarter, that dollar is going to change the game for you and your business.
Right. Because the best negotiation is certainly one that sets you up to win later.
100%. So keep that trump card. Know that you do have power. We're not telling you to not ask, but we're just saying be strategic. Be strategic with your pushing back, and don't waste a good thing if you don't need to.
Sure. That's a great thing to end on.
Okay. Well, is it lunchtime yet? Because I'm hungry.
I know. I didn't have breakfast either.
Oh, girl. Okay, yeah. This Diet Coke's not. I need a little bit more right now. So I think we're gonna basically, that's our cue. We're gonna be heading out here soon.
We're gonna grab some lunch, but you guys surely have a lot to munch on, which is
that's like a dad joke there.
I know. Which is when to push back on costing and when not to. We hope that you found some nuggets that are truly valuable to you. I did just want to say that we offer a mini course online that talks through how to determine what that target cost should even be, where to start with that. So if it's something that interests you, go to the link in our bio on Instagram. You can see it there. It's the Smart Start Sourcing course. And it really just helps you to outline where you should be so that you know if you should push or not.
I love that. Okay. Right. Well, until the next episode, we'll see you back here on
The Sourcing Gals.